Howdy, welcome to another one of these things. I'm making another troll video because I feel like the old one is really outdated, and I've gotten a lot better at the style since. So I start with the head. As always, that's I think the best place to start with. I freehanded it, but you might want to scale up a sprite and use that as reference. Originally I planned to start with the face, but I was having too much trouble with just getting that scaled right, so I went straight in with the hair. I wanted to go for sort of a businessman-like, sculpted, gelled up, very intentional hair. So I do this high-rise bump and then go right in for 2 spikes to imply loose strands. I accidentally used an anti-aliased fill, so I fixed that real quick. And I go in for the sideburn. Too often people will, just do hair once, and then after a little iteration, they're done with it. Constant iteration is so important. Little adjustments really make it or break it. I add a little bit of curvature to the side. It was feeling too blocky, too kind of square and helmet-like, so I fixed that up a bit. There we go. More adjusting, more sculpting of the spikes. Fill that in. It was rising up too much on the right side, so I square it out a little bit more. So it still feels like it falls, across the forehead area of the face. Now I add in the other side. That really gives it this 3D look. It feels like, that's on the other side of the head. So here I'm going for sort of jughead eyes. I think they can be done in the style, but they're really tough to pull off. But they're reasonably, within the influence of what Andrew Hussey's style could be and could have. They're wide set, very simplified Western cartoony eyes. Similarly, I go for sort of a big Nate cheek dimple. It really gives this impression of smugness. I went with a grin originally, but I changed that. I felt like it wasn't working with the character. This whole face, actually, I changed later. It just didn't feel right. Here I am adding the eye bags. They're important. As I mentioned, constant iteration is the spice of these sprites. So I think every element you see here I do change. Now I'm going for the horns. I decided to go with something simple. Too often people will go, crazy ass multi-spiked horns, when really you can just go with super simple, even like classic devil or like tiefling horns will work perfectly fine and look great. So I went with that for this. Just very simple spikes. They fit the design well. I used Karkat Sprite just for color reference. I usually keep that on hand. My advice to any beginner is to keep Karkat and John sprites on hand. Usually for humans, I do John and Dave because they're sort of the two opposite ends of the spectrum of how Hussey draws human characters. For trolls, I would just do Karkat, maybe Vriska. Here I am going back to the face, making minor adjustments to the eyes. Because it's aliased, it's not quite pixel art, but it's really important to adjust your pixels, at least a small amount, so that you can get them looking good. I move on to the body. I'm freehanding it because I have a decent, intuitive understanding at this point of how these sprites work. But I do fuck it up, so I had to go back in later and adjust that. I'm trying to draw a suit jacket. I think doing a closed, buttoned-up suit works well for the character at this point. I'll change that later as well. So red is generally viewed as a accent color in trolls. Vriska's shoes have it, Kanaya's dress has it, Terezi has it on the sunglasses and the shoes. Usually if people want to put more color in their trolls, I will suggest using red, but in this case, red wasn't the play. Its color is generally associated with sort of gothness on Alternia. It adds pep to a character that might not otherwise have pep. Here I am doing more micro adjustments, trying to sharpen up all of those corners. If I was drawing this at sprite scale, I would be using a 3-pixel brush probably for those, and that looks square in those sizes in Photoshop. These are the shoes. That design for dress shoes is based on John's suit that he gets when he visits his dad's room. They're very simple. So this is the design I originally landed on, but then I realized that all of it felt bad and I wanted to change every single element of it. Here I go in sort of trying to add, like a Mr. Fantastic silver temples thing, but because trolls are all kids, I couldn't do gray. So I thought I'd do a dyed streak. It adds a pop of color and it looks good. I hated the face, so I'm doing minor adjustments. Eyes in MSPA are generally widely far apart. It adds this sort of dopiness to the designs that's really essential. I'm going back and redrawing the mouth, making it a little more vertical. I don't know if that was entirely the right play, and I think I would have squashed it more and added more teeth, like Terezi or Tavros' mouths, if I was going with this design. It doesn't feel right. I think a big part of that is not getting too precious with design elements. I really liked the hair, but I thought I could do better and make something that was both more interesting and more accurate. A couple years back, there was the prevailing sentiment that what made a good MSPA design was geometricness. Make a hair feel blocky and cartooned. And I don't think that's true anymore. It doesn't feel right. What I think is more important is flow and making a design that is idealized and cartooned but still represents something. This hair was very heavily inspired by Dean Venture and I believe Dr. Orpheus from the Venture Brothers. Minor adjustment, the video cut out and I fix everything. But this is what the current version of the hair looks like. You have this through line from the widow's peak to the top spike, and a large blocky stray hair. Usually when people do stray hairs that are beginners to the style, they'll do, 1 or 2 pixel lines, and I think it's so much more interesting and works a lot better. If you do something big and thick, it just fits the style much better. Here we go, more micro adjustments. Again, constantly, you gotta be making little changes, making things feel better. It's true that imperfections are very important to the style, but I would argue more important to the style is flow. And so when those imperfections adjust, curves or points, I think it's important to straighten and fix some of those out. I'm changing the horns again, making them a little longer, a little pointier, a little straighter. The right one I feel is too far over, so I'm just adjusting, and sculpting is a big part of designing trolls. Because you're working in bigger blocks of color with black hair and outlineless horns, you get to sculpt a lot with your eraser. And that's really important for getting that look. Now I'm starting on the new version of the face. So, while I do like the Jughead eyes, I feel like they're better reserved for human characters because you can do more with non-dot eyes. In general, it's pretty important for trolls to make their eyes feel actually less unique. If you look at the beta trolls, they all have very similar eyes. The girls all look sort of the same. The boys all follow that ovoid pattern. And so I went back, made a less unique but still more interesting face. Eyebrows are sort of yes or no in the style. Most of them don't have it, but if they do really improve the expression or the face, I think it's important to keep them and do something unique with them. It's better than doing a 2-pixel line that just goes across and looks like a lidded eye. If you actually do interesting eyebrows, like the thin in the front and then bushier in the back, it looks cool. This is an adjusted version of that cheek fold. I still wanted to go for that big Nate smugness, but I thought I could do something different. The bottom lip here is sort of inspired by SpongeBob. I've never seen that on a sprite in this exact way. Usually when people do it, myself included, they're inspired by Ace Dick, and they go with sort of one that leads directly into the chin. I thought I'd do something else. Similarly, I'm going with something of my own design for the sunken eyes. I thought would really add an air of menace to this troll, as trolls should have. They should either look like douchebags, tools, or evil characters. In this case, I'm extending the eye bags up to the eyebrows to sink his eyes in more. Realistically, light hitting from the top would show light on the top of the eyelids, but the bags and under the brows would be sunken in, looking like that. So it adds a little more elements of dynamism to this whole design. Here I am finally fixing the body. I made it too tall, too wide, so I skew it and scale it and just make sure it really fits. This is the proportions better, but I'm still not happy with the suit, so I'm going to go back and redesign that. In my experience, it really helps to draw the body in one line. Often people will draw the shirt and then draw the shorts or pants, and there'll be this disconnect between the two. Doing it in one line and then roughing up that seam a little bit later makes it feel a lot more seamless in a sense, and once again, that flow that is essential to the style. I believe Radical Dude called it the Andrew Hussey freakin' flow after a Homestar Runner bit, is pretty essential. I also got rid of the hem lines on the pants. I was looking at Carcat's sprite and I realized that he didn't actually have those, and I thought it looked more interesting without them. So here I am filling in the whole thing black. Looking at, say, Tavros' sprite or Terezi's sprite, I remembered that actually all that gray doesn't look very good, and it feels more in style to do this solidly black thing. At least that was my thinking at the time. Here I am trying out a blue tie. I feel like that's too much of one color, though, and it doesn't look very good. It's all centered up top, and the rest is all just black and white. So I ditch that idea and go with something else. I'm thinking about doing a Vriska-inspired dark blue jacket, but that feels too politician-y and also doesn't look very good. I'm going for a rich businessman, not a politician, so I walk that back, accidentally used the wrong color. Let's try something else. So first plan, maybe a tie on top of just a shirt, like a black collared shirt. And honestly, looking back on it, I'm still pretty happy with this version. Well, not this version. I made the tie look kind of shit. But I'm happy with this concept, and I think it could work on a different character, but it just didn't entirely fit. It also really illustrates well that the plane of symmetry on the head and on the body are a little different. The head is offset by, I think 3-4 pixels on sprite size. Here it's a little more because it's not sprite size. Anyways, I walk that back and go for a jacket. This one is, once again, taking reference from Vriska. I think she's a really good baseline for a lot of things you can do. So I make sure to make the outline of the jacket go different. I'm experimenting with a couple different symbols here. Troll symbols, I will admit, I'm not very good at, but I try to actively avoid ever using the extended zodiac. I don't like it. I think it's more interesting to use other alchemical, astrological, what have you symbols than just the boring ones they came up with. It makes your troll more unique in the long run. Instead of doing a normal jacket, I decided to do a blazer and go for the sort of the current trend of tech billionaires wearing a t-shirt under a sports blazer. I think is really common, and it's something I haven't seen much in trolls. So this is sort of closer to the final design I land with, and I'm quite happy with it. Here I am adjusting the pants more. Again, little adjustments, going back to things you did before and seeing how you can improve them, do whatever. I'm still not totally sold on the dress shoes. I think maybe I could have done sneakers, but I don't know. Experiment with a different palette, don't like it, go back. I also don't like how I did the symbol, so I had a brain blast. Instead of doing a blue symbol to bring another color in, I can do a gold necklace. It feels unique. It's inspired by, I believe, Red Glare's Sufferer necklace, and I end up running with that for the final thing. I was going to do a Mars sign, but then I remembered that that was kind of aping Rocket Papaya from Divine Interference, because he's also a blue blood. So instead I do this other thing. And I believe that's essentially the final design. I'm quite happy with it. And I won't get into the process of naming trolls or theming trolls as much in this video. It's very much a vibes-based thing, but there it is. So the guy's name is Skitch Wickham. It's just a name I thought sounded good. I don't put too much stock in making your name super meaningful. I know that almost all of the trolls were suggested names from users, and I think users probably did put a lot of meaning into them based on, you know, their apparent theme and Gemini stuff, but I think people often forget that Hussey didn't name the trolls, the readers did, and the readers put more emphasis on theming than I think Hussey would, which is also why the names he did pick aren't super obvious. Like, if I was making a caterpillar-themed troll, I wouldn't make their name a grub or larva or caterpillar pun. I usually just do a name that sounds alien and weird, and usually has some harsh z or k or sh sounds, is sort of what I tend to lean on. Or just one that sounds funny. I have a troll named Randy. Similarly, the theming of a troll, I think with all Homestuck designs, it's important to have some amount of a theme. John is a nerd, Dave is cool, Vriska is spider-themed, almost, but then people lean too much on themes. You know, Carcat isn't crab-themed because he's Cancer, he actually is just kind of a dude. You know, Solux has a leaning on duality-themed, but beyond that, beyond the shoes and the shades, his design is actually pretty regular. So I think it's important to not be too overbearing with what your theme is and how you manifest that on your design. That's why I just did sort of a businessman. Similarly, don't make your trolls dress too colorful or too nice. That's why I walked back the suit. I think it looked too nice for an Alternian design, and doing the kind of shabby graphic tee plus blazer combo worked a lot more with, at least as Carcat says at one point, the lack of fashion on Alternia. Anyways, that's all for this video. Thanks. Peace.